Hi and welcome to yet another episode. As I'm sure you're aware, this is a show and tell episode, and what we have here is the Roland DM-2100, which is a 2.1 speaker system, which is basically the front left, front right and a sub. I'm sure a lot of people nowadays understand the differences when they talk about 2.1 or 5.1 and so on. These speakers are 50 watt subwoofer and 15 watt each for the satellite units, which is basically the front left, front right. So they've got 15 watts each, which isn't too bad for a system of this size. Now, I'm sure that the camera will probably shake around a little bit as I'm turning this over, so just ignore that. I'm trying my best not to break everything. Just glad that I've been hitting the gym, because this thing is quite chunky when it comes to turning it over, because of the big heatsink that's in this thing to help keep it cool, because it has the amp in there. Now, what we have is a connection to the right speaker. Basically, that's the speaker that in this particular design has all the controls and everything on there, which I'll of course show you in a little bit. But it looks a bit like an S-video or a S-VHS connection, but it's not. And then of course it's got the two RCA or the two phono ports, and then it's got for the power cable, which is an 8 connection, and it has the power switch, which sends the power to the speakers, the front speakers, but it also has a power button on there as well. So let me just pause this video for a moment while I go get the satellite speakers.
A few inches later.
So we've got the front left and the front right speakers. There's the Roland logo, and then also there's quite a nice design here with the metal grille with some 4 bolts holding it down. A little plaque at the bottom here giving you some information about the speakers themselves. So it's a bit of an advert for Roland, really. If you have these up on your desk and you've got visitors that come around and they see them and they go, these sound good, what can they do? Well, you can just say, well, read that. So let's read that. It says the DM-2100 2.1 channel speaker system, wooden cabinet, high quality sound, 50 watt subwoofer, 15 watt plus 15 watt satellite units, down facing woofer and dedicated foot insulators, 24-bit 96 kHz optical or coaxial SP diff input, and individual low boost and tone controls. Those controls are on the front of this speaker obviously, but let's have a look at the back of the left speaker. And really it's quite boring, because all it has is the RCA or the phono connection coming from the sub, and obviously what's happening is that the outputs from your devices that you send to the speakers, which is the inputs on this, are actually getting sent to the sub so it can amplify them and then send them back to these speakers, so you get to hear what you want to hear. Now, the inputs from the devices that you want to connect up to, there's actually 2 lines. So you've got your RCA or your phono connections, or you can use your 6.35mm or 1/4 inch connections for here. And then obviously there's that S-video sort of looking cable that connects up to the sub for your controls, and then also there's the connection to actually get the audio back from the sub through here. Now you can have it that it's reversed or normal, and that's so that if you want it to set it up a certain way, even though it is left and right, you can have it that you flipped them across, so if that fits better on your table that way. Then also what you've got you can as an input as well if you want. You can have optical with the SP diff, or you can have the coaxial connection to connect up that way. Now let's have a look at the front of this speaker to see the controls. And here we are. So we've got yet another power button. We've got our bass control, our tone control, and then we've got individual volume controls for the digital input or line 1, and then for line 2 you've also got another volume control there. Having 2 different inputs will come in quite handy for me, because it means that I can have my MIDI tower or MIDI mountain hooked directly up to it, or I can hook up a console or whatever straight to these without having to go through my soundboard first. So for my little retro corner it's going to come in very handy. There's no real point in me recording the audio that I get from these, because I've only got a mono microphone, and even if I did have a stereo setup, it would come down to, is my microphone setup good enough, or are your speakers good enough? Because quite frankly they have to be as good as these or better than these before you would even get an impression of what these speakers are actually like. you would actually have to come round and listen to them in person. Because if your speakers don't do as good as response, then it would come down to, well, all you're getting is good as what you're hearing out of those speakers anyway. It's a bit like back in the day when they would show you how wonderful a 4K telly is on the adverts when you were watching a 1080 telly. There's no point apart from, hey, look, we sell these. So all I can say to you is that these particular speakers are a big jump up from the speakers that I have for my retro corner. I have a 5.1 setup on my main computer, but for the retro corner I've got some desktop speakers which do a good job. They're not bad, but they're 10 years old now. But these ones were even older. These are about 15 years old now. I believe they came out in the end of 2003, the start of 2004, and they cost about £250 at launch. I managed to pick these up for around £50. So for me, this is a big step up from the cheapo speakers that I bought from around 2009. These ones though, as I say, from 2004, but they were a higher quality in the first place and carried on being a higher quality than the ones that I actually bought in 2009. So of course that means they carry on being a better quality speaker. And of course I get the fun of actually having a subwoofer, so that gives some nice bass to some games and things. I realise it's just for the retro corner, so basically like the Amiga, the ST, my MSX are the ones that are going to be pumping out sound from here. But I've also, because it's got the two inputs, I'm wanting to sort it out cable wise, that I get all my MIDI tower or MIDI mountain hooked up to them, and I get a nice response out of those when I'm using, say, like the Amiga or the ST to do MIDI through them. Because as I said, I have a 5.1 system, and for when I'm on my main PC I've got it wired to go through that, so it's nice through them because that is a high quality speakers that I have for them anyway. But all in all, this is just a show and tell. So if you do see these about and you can pick them up for a nice price around £50, I currently wouldn't spend any more than that on here, on these. Now if it turns out that there's better speakers out here at that price range you can pick up, and then by all means go get them. It all comes down to personal choice. I quite like these, and quite frankly, in some ways I bought them because they are Roland and I wanted that to match up with my MIDI tower. That's the excuse I'm using. So I wouldn't be surprised that there is better speakers you can pick up for about £50, but at the same time I think you'd be about hard pushed. They're not what some people call as monitors when it comes to speakers. They're not true like for like producing audio like some fantastic speakers are. And for those that might not know, and that's exactly what it is that when speakers become so good, they're actually called monitors instead, because they produce like for like audio, at least so close that even people with fantastic hearing and they know what they should be listening for, they can't tell the difference. So with these though, they're a lot better than the cheapo ones that I bought for, you know, playing around on the Amiga and everything about 10 years ago. I actually didn't buy them for the Amiga, but you know what I mean, they're sort of just cheapo speakers, you know, they cost £10 10 years ago. So all in all though, I hope that was interesting and a nice little look at things. As always, happy gaming.